Hello, family. I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ that came to recovery for abandonment issues. I struggle with anger, and my name is Michelle. Man, I'm not supposed to cry in the opening sentence. My story started in the late 70s to a girl barely able to drive. Of course, I do not remember that event, nor many that followed, but they would shape me into something I didn't like. My father was never in the picture. My mother struggled with her own issues along with the rest of my family, so life became incredibly rocky for me, particularly over the next 10 years. I remember taking my first flight when I was nearly 3 years old. I was going to Illinois to live, but I didn't understand. I had been removed from my mother's custody, and there was no one in my Georgia family who could or would take care of me, so I was sent to live with my great uncle. The family I moved in with had 4 kids, and they were adding me. My great-grandmother was also there in the same town, and she would eventually become to be a huge part of my life as a kid. One day, I arrived home from kindergarten, and my mom had come to take me back. She was dating a man in the same town, and they were married shortly after, and we were going to be a family. My mother, with unresolved issues, married an alcoholic with anger issues. Can you say explosive? The physical abuse usually happened on nights that he had too much to drink, and a few times she ended up in the hospital. Police were called numerous times, but nothing ever changed. I would long to be normal, never really knowing what that looked like. There was a point in my search for a normal family. I remember thinking that my stepfather was my biological father. I don't know for how long it was or why, but some part of my mind wanted that to be the case. However, one night during an argument, I overheard him say, "She's not my kid. I don't have to treat her like she is." This left me even more insecure than before. Who was my father, and why did he not want to have anything to do with me? And why was he not protecting me from all this stuff happening around me? I had way more questions than answers, and the more questions I asked, the less answers I received. I grew to hate the way that they made me feel, and I would plead to go to my grandma's as soon as I got out of school on Fridays, and I would stay until Sunday nights. Here I was safe, especially when she flung her arm across my chest as she slammed on the brakes to stop during our grocery store runs. She taught me to work hard, sew, cook, play cards, and we spent countless hours trying to figure out who killed JR. She met with her ladies and would take me with her, and I always felt very special. Within 6 years, we moved to Wyoming, Georgia, and back to Illinois. We had 7 houses in the same small town, so stability was the last word that I would use for us. I was constantly going to new schools. I was shy and didn't really know how to make friends, and when I did make friends, I was jealous of their lives. They had parents that seemed to be what I thought was normal. What had I done to end up with the life that I had? Why didn't I have a mom and a dad that lived normal lives? This further embedded the abandonment and insecurity issues that I had. Was it me? Why could nothing last? As a kid, I didn't see the financial aspect or whatever the reason was. I only knew my life changed all the time. Eventually, my mom had enough, and one day she packed what she could and we moved back to Georgia, leaving everything that I knew behind once again. Over the years, I had spent as much time as I could with my great-grandmother, so leaving her was the most difficult part. Saying goodbye to the one person that I felt secure with just added on to the abandonment issues that I had brewing in my head. In Georgia, I was 12. My mom and I were living with my grandparents, and I was starting yet another school. But life seemed to be better. I was adjusting well, but my grandparents were very religious, and at this point in my life, I had very little interaction with church or God. My mom had lots of insecurities that she carried with her and passed them along to me when it came to my grandparents. She felt like she never measured up, and I immediately felt the same. They took me to church with them, and in my head, it was because I was not good enough and that I needed to be someone else. In my head, they could not accept me for who I was. I needed to be like them and go to church and learn about God. I was so defiant. One night I was in church watching my grandmother worship the Lord like no one I'd ever seen, and my grandfather sing as loud as he could, off key. I was so embarrassed, but Pastor Fred was preaching about salvation. I vividly remember the warm feeling in my heart and the turning in my stomach when he asked if anyone needed to come forward. I moved to the end of the aisle and asked God into my heart that night. My grandparents were so excited and joyful, and so was I, but the doubt in my head started taking over. Going to church was hard. I was so insecure by this point that I didn't feel good in my own skin, much less in a house of God. I was out of place, I felt unliked, and completely unworthy. This was definitely not the place for me. My mind was filled with stinking thinking, and it would pull me away from church completely. At 15, I received my first letter from my biological father. My grandparents wanted to meet me. He was writing for them, not for him. He was very clear on that. After lots of thinking on this, I decided that I wanted to know them as well. A relationship formed, but I did not meet my father until several years later when my grandfather passed away. He has chosen over and over not to have a relationship with me, and I've grown to realize that I'm much better off with my heavenly Father than my earthly father. Jesus stepped in that space many years ago. Through a step study and therapy, I've been able to accept that I did nothing wrong, that I was not a mistake, that my biological father is at fault, and he is definitely missing out. I had struggled with my identity for a very long time. I was not making wise decisions for myself. School had become less of a priority, and boys were at the top of my list because I was looking for a love that I did not feel at home. I felt like I was way at the bottom of my mother's priority list and nowhere on my father's. So when I met a boy that put me at the top of his, it changed my life. We dated for over a year and married shortly after we found out that we were expecting a baby. And this left me 17, a senior in high school, married with a baby on the way. My beautiful daughter was born, and I knew I wanted to be the best mother to this girl that I could be. I was intentional about my role as a mom from day one. It was easy, just do the opposite of all that I was taught. No need to fix the past, just do the opposite. That would work, right? My precious son was born 2.5 years later, and the same motto still stood. Dig in, work hard, raise kids, and succeed. To say that I've loved being a mom from that first moment I laid eyes on them is an understatement. I thank God for them every single day, and by the grace of God, I didn't screw them up too bad. Although I did the opposite, we were stable. The only time the kids changed schools were because of zoning changes. We were active in multiple sports at any given time. They went for dental appointments every 6 months, never missed annual physicals, but we were failing at living a life with Jesus, and it was felt. My daughter kept urging me to find a church, so we started looking around. After some searching, we found Eastridge and loved every moment that we were here, even if it was once or twice every other month. My attendance grew, and I could tell that I was being pulled to the church. I was craving it, so I started in the growth group, Life's Healing Choices, and this changed my life. It was at this place that my marriage was failing, my kids needed better, and it was time to get help for the past hurts in my life. So when a friend recommended a step study, I jumped on in. In November of 2009, I walked into my first step study lesson and was greeted by the most amazing leaders. From this first night, I knew where I was supposed to be. 2 days later, I stepped through the doors of CR for the very first time. I went to Newcomers 101, where I was able to see Gay for the second time in a week and knew I was exactly in the right place at exactly the right time. God's time. I was letting God into my life and making him a priority. Therefore, I was able to let a lot of hurts go and start moving forward. My heart was healing, my mind was being restored, and with that, my relationships were becoming better than they ever were. I made the decision, and Scott baptized me and my daughter right here in this room, February of 2010. God was making me see that my thoughts in the past could not have been more wrong. God was helping me to see that without the past, I would not be me. But most importantly, I was seeing that even in my darkest moments, He was always there with me. He loved me and was with me even when I thought I was all alone. My mind was being transformed. I was starting to see that I was worthy and deserving of love and forgiveness. My husband and kids started attending and working on themselves, and life was changing for all of us. We were foster parents, and I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I was serving at church, at CR, and now in my home, loving on children who were like me, who felt abandoned and alone. After several months and a couple placements, my husband felt he could not continue on. He requested to stop fostering, and this left me devastated. I was in a tailspin of anger and grief. I reluctantly submitted to what he wanted, but was not happy about it. To add to all of this, in February of 2014, everything changed for me and my family again. My husband was hiding many secrets, and the family would not be able to recover from them. The only way I can describe it is total devastation to me and our marriage as I knew it, and we divorced in 2016. My mind was immediately filled with rage, disgust, guilt, anger, insecurities, and mistrust. God knew what He was doing, but I was so confused and hurt. I felt like He had opened many doors so easily just to have them all slammed and my heart completely broken. For me, when the going has gotten tough, I poured everything I have into the Lord, reading, worshiping, serving, learning, leaning onto the ones that could heal me. And it has worked every single time. This time was no different. I poured myself into serving in many roles, along with counseling and step studies. I worked on the matters at hand. When I was able to see clearly, I could see that God used my daughter to get me to Eastridge, that He used Life's Healing Choices to get me to CR. And then He used Gay to show me that I was exactly where I needed to be and kept me here. He put a job in my path so that I was able to provide for my kids as a single mom. He put me in the middle of my forever people so that not if, but when I crashed, they could help me put all the pieces back together. God was showing me that He was there, that He had always been there, and that He always had my best interest in mind. He was healing me and making me a stronger person, allowing me to be an even better mom and be there for my kids to heal slowly and surely. I had a team of people that surrounded me, loved me, spoke truth to me, and that stings sometimes, allowed me to vent, cry, scream, and eventually help me grow and move forward. Step 2 is earnestly believe that God exists, that I matter to Him, and that He has the power to help me recover. I could not have made it as far as I have without God. He has been my rock, my portion, my stronghold, and now I am worshiping the Lord like my grandmother does, and I cannot wait till the day I get to sing at the top of my lungs with my grandfather. What a beautiful image of Jesus He was in my life. He showed me exactly what I deserved in a man. It just took me some years to find Him. In December, I will celebrate my 7th anniversary with Brian, the man that God designed for me. Oof. He is so much like my grandpa, only he sings a little softer and mostly all on key. From the first conversation we had, I knew there was something special about B, but it scared me to death, and it would take me over a year to go on our first date. We fell into conversation so easily and fell into love so quickly. From the start, He has shown me over and over how I deserve to be treated. He has honored me. Whew. Most people cry during the sad parts. Whew. He has honored me and my kids every step of the way and has given me 2 bonus sons. Brian and I keep God at the center of our marriage. That was foreign to me. He has been patient with me and helped me to see just how loved I am by God and by Him. My word for 2024 is me. My goal in this is to finally, after all these years in recovery, to start loving myself. My prayer almost daily is to see myself the way that God does, and Brian too. On our 8th day of marriage, we got to meet our grandson, our first grandson. He was a perfect addition to our family. Since then, we've added 3 more grandsons. Y'all, my daughter and I are drowning in testosterone. Finally, last year, we were gifted the cutest little girl in our world. These little ones get to see B and I in a healthy, God-filled marriage, and we could not be more proud of them or that fact. A couple of years ago, I experienced a huge hurt here in the church, and it caused me to step back and reevaluate the entire situation. And honestly, I ran. God kept nudging me to come back, but I was afraid that I was not strong enough. Once again, He showed me that He was right. Being in recovery does not mean that life will be without hurt, sorrow, loss, or fault. But being in recovery will equip you with all the tools that you need to get through it. What I've learned is that no matter who they are, every person that walks through these doors are human. Not a single one is perfect. That includes you and me. I've been living the 12 steps of recovery and the 8 principles to guide my way ever since 2009. God started showing me flaws and a little at a time and helping me to work through them. He also started revealing my hurts to me and helping me navigate them. Much of my life I just can't remember, and there are some memories that just don't make sense to me. He's still guiding me and fixing these things one day at a time. Childhood trauma is real, but it does not have to define me. In the beginning, I was ashamed that it took me so long to ask for help, but God knew when I would come to Him, and He was ready. What I have learned is that God will only give you what you can handle when you can handle it. I have made my amends now, and I'm living one day at a time. Today, I'm in a great place, and I only have God to thank for that. He has helped me to see that Celebrate is where I belong. I love this ministry. I love to serve. Once a month, we're in Newcomers 101. The other weeks, I co-lead the food and body image group, and I have rejoined the team. I have been working on relationships, making amends, and forgiving those that have hurt me. There is always a process. Some hurts are deep, and it takes forgiving every single day. My mom and I are in the best place that we have ever been. I was able to see that she was not trying to avoid me or hurt me. She was working 3 jobs to keep a roof over my head. She and I have come a long way over the years, and I can only thank God for that. We have generational sin and hurt behind us, and we are breaking the cycles. To the newcomer, none of this happens overnight. You will not wake up tomorrow healed. Keep coming back. Recovery is certainly like an onion. I just completed my 5th step study. Yes, I said 5th. And I am proud to stand here and say, I'm still not perfect. I have really bad days, and I still get hurt, and I hurt people. But Celebrate Recovery has equipped me with the tools that I need to continue life in a healthy way. The step studies help me to step into faith and be bold and start healing. My life verse, Jeremiah 29:11, says it all. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. No matter how much I tried to change my life, God always knew that one day I would surrender to Him, and He would put me on the right path. The same is true for you. You just have to surrender. But for tonight, just start by going to Newcomers 101, and then come back next week. Thank you for being my kind of normal and letting me share.